Cloud cover ached from mane to hoof. She struggled to open her eyes through the pain and disorientation that kept her from figuring anything out. She slid a foreleg around, and determined she was upside down. Cold steel pressed on the back of her neck. With a push and a low, extended groan, she flipped herself over, splaying herself out on the metal grating she landed on. A hoof connected with something soft and warm, and Cloudcover's heart stopped for a moment. Oh good. He's alive. The filly struggled to bring herself to all four hooves, and she collapsed onto her side with a sharp stab of pain. Every muscle in her body felt bruised and sore, and her head throbbed with a steady beat. Looking up, she could see that incredibly faint outline of an old metal vat. The screen busted out and hanging by a single screw. It swayed lightly by an unfelt breeze, the rust shrieking, echoing down the mysterious area. Then again, Cloud managed to stand up. Her legs shook violently, but she managed to maintain her balance. And slowly she shifted over to Cornea. Hey, get up. You all right? The Colt shook his head, immediately regretting that action. Ow! Celestia, everything hurts. Are you all right? Corona looked up, blinking in the pitch blackness around them. Squinting, he managed to make out Cloudcover's shape. Gingerly, he extended one of his limbs, flexing himself in as many manners as he could think of. I think so. Even my mane hurts, though. Despite everything, Cloudcover giggled. Relief washed over her as she suddenly realized they had managed to escape whatever horrors were prepared for them above. Well, we made it without too many problems. Now we just need to figure out where we are. Corona stumbled and slammed into the cloud wall, electing to stay leaning against it until he regained control of his legs again. Well, I see two directions. One's back, the other's forward. Both are incredibly dark and indistinguishable from each other. I think we should just move forward. No, stop. We need to be a little more observant about all this. Let's see. Above us is the vent we entered here. Provided it's straight down, the closest direction to the exterior of the building would be... The filly paused, her eyes narrowing in concentration. She spun around slowly, pointing. That way. Corona glanced where her hoof aimed. But how do we know that the vent didn't curve or move or anything? Were you awake during the fall? No. Feathers, I'm lost. Well, since we can't use the vent, then the only logical solution would be to use our surroundings. Do you see anything that sticks out? The Colt stood away from the wall, shaking his wings. I see dark, dark, more dark. A couple shadows, too. What about all these pipes running along the wall? Cloudcover leaned in close, her night vision hardly keeping in the hallway. The metal lines ran along the walls in sets, jarring upwards in completely random fashion, completely devoid of any and all markings. The spot on the wall that were bare held no signs designating anything. At most, Cloud could see bolt holes where directions may have been posted at one point in time. The fool dropped to her haunches, sighing. Useless. Like us. Totally useless. Well, Corona offered, lifting his friend's muzzle with a hoof. We might as well try and find out if your theory, in case it's right. He got up and began walking confidently down the hallway, taking large steps to avoid tripping over any random wires or conduits. Corona. Cloudcover laughed, standing up as well. You're going the wrong way. Right. Off we go. He smiled and spun around. Within seconds, he was already ahead of the filly, continuing his proud canter. You're better at noticing things. So I'll walk ahead, and you let me know if there's anything we should look at. Sounds good. Ah! Cloud leapt forward just in time to catch Corona dropping from her night vision. His yelp the only remaining clue as to where he was. She stopped right before the place he vanished, and noticed at the last second that the walkway had ended immediately past her. "Corona? Where are you?" Down here. It's only about a 10-foot drop. I'm fine. This looks more promising, though. There's some actual signs." Corona's words were cut short by an enormous howl, one resembling a timber wolf hunting on a moonlit night. The two fools stopped, their manes bristling as the ungodly noise continued, joined by several others, until finally they all cut out at the same time. "What in the Tartarus was that?" Cloudcover shivered. "There's no way wolves could make it up here. We're miles above the ground. What in Luna's name is going on in this place?" "Cloud, could you please hurry down? I don't want to be down here alone." Breaking herself from her terror, the filly attempted to gauge where to land. Nothingness. Simply an endless abyss gazed back. "And today started so well, too," she thought, closing her eyes and leaping. Weightlessness overwhelmed her, and she loosened her leg muscles, cringing in anticipation of the landing. She slammed into the metal grating below, a force buckling her knees and forcing her to smash into the ground. The crash echoed down the empty hallways, continuing for an eternity before silence finally overtook it. That has got to stop. The howling appeared again, louder this time, closer. Cloudcover backed up till she ran into Corona, and the two held each other close until the noise ended. "I don't like this. This whole place is messed up. We need to get out of here as soon as possible. Okay?" "Uh-huh." Cloud nodded, looking around again. They were at another junction. The walkway continued into an oblivion in front of them, but to their left and right, respectively, were two increasingly longer hallways. A dense fog seemed to pour out of the left way, flowing through the grating into an unseen destination below. To the right, a single light could be seen, though how far away the two didn't know. "If we go straight, nothing seems like it'll change. But there's something down the left way, something producing that fog. Maybe there's more activity down there. Higher chance of finding a way out if we see some actual workers." "What about the right?" I don't know about the right. Light is good, but if there's workers there, we'll have no place to hide. At least we can keep hidden in the fog." "Okay, let's go left. Maybe it's just a crack in the walls, you know? A leak? Then we could fly out of this nightmare." "Whatever it is, be it safe or suicide, might as well get it over with." Cloudcover sighed. With one last look at each other, with the fraction of light given to them, they plunged into the thick fog. Rainbow Dash was silent, staring into the maelstrom in front of her. Her forehooves rested, crossed on a thick safety railing. Without a word, she took in the pandemonium in the cyclone room. She squinted, inspecting the enormous pipes that rose from the depths of the factory like weeds from the bottomless pit below, transporting hundreds of gallons of various fluids per second. They shook and groaned, the sheer weight of their materials a never-ending strain on the transportation system. They lined the walls of the cavernous room, and, had they been the only objects, the noise would have been unbearable. The hurricane contained in the center of the void overshadowed that by a fair amount, however. Industrial fans of inconceivable size jutted out from the lower section of the room, their sharp blades adding air movement to the cyclone. "We'll have to increase windstorm production by a factor of 10, she murmured, surveying the fans, "to keep air movement between all our selling regions fresh." Rainbow Dash felt someone walking up next to her, their body blocking the constant barrage of wind from her side. She stared ahead as she spoke. "I'm disappointed, Dr. Atmosphere." "I'm rather insulted that you blame me for a breakout which should have been contained by Tulip's team of specialized, highly trained security ponies." "Don't give me that manure. Hide. Your engineers designed that whole room to be completely escape-proof. Security teams are there for decoration and, on occasion, keeping failures in line with those hilarious cattle prods.
something leads me to believe you're starting to have a problem with how I run this facility.
This again? We went over all that this morning. Rainbow Dash kicked back from the railing and turned a wing, catching Dr. Atmosphere off guard and slamming his neck against the edge. She raised a foreleg and pressed it against his cheek, forcing his body to slide slightly off the rails. Hyde bared his teeth, glaring at his supervisor while the gale force winds whipped at his short mane.
Well then perhaps I wasn't clear enough,
Dash snapped, stepping down on the clear.
So, let me make it really simple for you. If you ever do anything to jeopardize the integrity of this factory again, then you'll be a part of the next wind shipment to Appaloosa. Understand?
Hyde spit with the wind, growling. I might be a little more inclined to support your ideals if they didn't involve threats against my well-being every damned morning. Rainbow Dash flapped her wings in anger, adding more strain to Dr. Atmosphere's neck. But before your discipline, your top engineer, Hyde choked. Please remember that I have tenure. Dash tried to hold back her smile at the stallion's comment, but eventually the humor overtook her and she guffawed, releasing her hold on him. The engineer pulled himself back from the abyss, rubbing his back. He grimaced, stepping away from the mad mare. You're not going to like this, but I think it's time we start considering a contingency plan. In case we can't stop those fools from getting out and breaking everything, that is. We need to make sure that the fallout is as minimal as possible, Dash. We should start working on that right now.
Oh, Hyde.
Rainbow Dash tisked, shaking her dull mane.
You've gone senile in your old age. No single soul has ever passed through this factory, and I intend to keep it that way. I've even gone so far as to kill the one absolutely closest to me, to keep everything running smoothly. It's been a long time since then, Hyde. But if I was willing to do that, what makes you think I'd consider two random fools any harder to deal with?
Guaranteed, the doctor nodded. But we've no security down below, minus the remnants of whatever workers we've banished to work those haunted halls. If they can make it past them, they might be able to sneak out somehow. Who knows what those cooks have destroyed? The Scion Pegasus turned from the cyclone, walking back towards the hall that led to her office. She glared at the blood-red stallion as he fixed his mane, spiking it backwards in its original position.
If I didn't know any better, I'd almost bet you engineered their escape simply to force me into this position.
Who? Me? I'm obviously too old and senile to play such a thing.
Knock it off, or I'll follow through with my words. So, Mr. Smarty Hooves, what did you have in mind in keeping those failures from ruining my facility?
Well... Cloudcover walked slowly, sensory deprivation leaving her absolutely terrified. She could see nothing in the white fog, whereas in the dark alleyways behind her, she could at least make out outlines. In the thick mist, there was nothing but the constant echo of hundreds of hoofsteps on the steel floor. Briefly, the filly had attempted to run a wingtip along the wall to keep her bearings, and search for anything of interest. But a scorched feather from a stream conduit quickly showed her that was a bad idea. All Cloudcover had was fog and the reassuring warmth of Corona next to her. The sound of their soft clip-clop, clip-clops bounced off the hidden walls and devices that lined them, disorientating Cloud. It was as if dozens of ponies were walking all around her, moving with the same solemn gait as she did. A sudden vision of dozens of foals chained together, their heads low, came to Cloudcover. She closed her eyes and shook the image out of her mind.
Stay focused, Cloud. Just your mind playing tricks on you, trying to keep itself occupied. If I find something to think about, I'll stay away.
Keeping her eyes closed, the filly started thinking of her life up till this point. Memories that made her smile, like when she first met Corona in flight school, and the colt's hyperactivity and humor. She remembered her prize-winning article on the history of the flock and their Spartan culture. She remembered being selected to run the Academy's paper, and all the fun she had researching and writing. Not all of her memories were happy, but were important steps nonetheless. She remembered being accepted into the flight school and how adamant her parents were that she practice constantly. Regret overwhelmed her as she recalled how she put off the single exercises during designed to prepare foals from the final exam. She elected instead to hide and write silly stories and read books which, as far as Cloud could care, would never matter to her again. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I should have listened to what they told me. I'd have had time to read as much as I wanted to when I passed. Okay, this isn't helping. Maybe I can get Corona to talk. That may keep me distracted. The purple foal opened her eyes and looked next to her. Only the slightest of difference in the shade of the fog told Cloudcover that her friend was there. Hey, Corona? Nope. An old and scarred stallion's face jumped out of the fog, his eyes bloodshot and bulging. The pony bared his teeth in a horrendous grin, his pupils shifting and dilating in rapid succession. Cloudcover leapt back, shrieking, kicking at the sudden apparition, falling backwards until her head slammed against something cold and metal. Sparks ignited as her vision, as the pain shot down her entire body, when she pulled herself, crying and shaking. The rush of hoofsteps exploded around her, confusing her even more. Cloud rocked, waiting, hoping, praying that it was a silly nightmare that she could wake up from any minute now. Cloud! Cloud, what happened? Are you okay? Corona's voice appeared, and the silhouette of a colt came rushing through the fog. He reached out to the filly, and she slapped his hooves away. Go away! Corona! Help! Help! Cloud, it's me! It's Corona! What's going on? Cloudcover grabbed her friend close, pulling him down to her. She sobbed, clenching at his mane. Hey, there. Come on now. Deep breaths, and let's get going. It's okay. I'm here. There was somebody else. Right where you were. Where were you? She looked up at the colt, her bright yellow eyes pained and teary. I walked ahead, I guess. But you were right next to me. I could see. Oh, Celestia. What? There was some pony next to me, too. Corona's legs immediately started to shake. Cloud, we need to move. I think they know we're here. Good idea. There's no use in being stealthy if they can somehow find us in this damn mist. Let's just, on the count of 3, let's run till we clear the fog. Okay? But don't leave me behind. Corona managed a chuckle. Did you forget you're a Pegasus? Just because we failed doesn't mean we're not allowed to fly. The colt unfurled his wings and beat them hard, lifting off the ground. There's easily enough room for the two of us to fly side by side in here. If I start getting ahead, you'll feel my wing beats, and you can just call out to me. Sound good? Cloudcover leaped up, hovering in place. Deal. Ready? Let's go. The two kicked off, the fog swirling around them as they built up momentum with awkward flaps. Soon they were gliding close to the ceiling. They were low enough to avoid the vents and circuitry that lined the roof, but high enough to avoid any would-be workers on the floor below. For the first time since Cloudcover had woken up this morning, a sense of security returned to her. Flight. Glorious flight. There's nothing more peaceful, more relaxing, or more calming than the rush of wind beneath my primaries. The first thing I'm doing when I'm getting out of this place is flying till I pass out. The filly breathed deeply, the cool mist lining her lungs and reinvigorating her, soothing her sore muscles as tension in her wings all but vanished. She continued to relax, allowing her legs to hang limply in the euphoria of flight, embracing the dampness of the air as it wrapped around her limbs, the breeze tickling her nose and the cold numbing her fear. She smiled, listening in the endless silence of the factory for anything that may help her escape. A high-pitched "ah!" echoed in the hallway, as Cloud's hanging hoofs connected solidly with something hard and heavy. Her heart jumped a beat, but she continued to fly.
What was that, Cloud?
Corona asked, slowing his pace to stay with his friend. The filly rubbed the hoof near her rear leg, feeling something warm and sticky wipe off.
Well, if they didn't know we were here before, they definitely know now. I think I kicked someone. That's the spirit,
the cold huffed.
Now, let's hurry up. I think the fog is starting to clear.
Cloudcover squinted hard, and sure enough, the thick mist in front of them was beginning to fade. Jagged shapes of railings and odd devices began to materialize as they flew forward, each successive one clearer than the one before. The section of the factory they had entered was more maintained. Ahead, the filly saw spots of lights, precious and threatening to her at the same time. She pushed the worries of being spotted out of her mind. For the time being, Cloudcover was just happy she could see. The two came to a stop at the edge of the fog. A broken vent was spewing the vapor, and while a small amount continued to leak down the hall, the majority of it flowed to where the foals had just come from.
Well, that's a relief. That stuff was terrifying to fly in. It's just wrong. It's just like a cloud, Corona. Fog scares me. There's always a chance you'll run into the Pegasus when you're flying in fog. I'm glad we're out. No idea where we are, though. I don't see the fabled end of the building we were looking for.
Cloudcover didn't reply. She walked slowly around her friend, examining the new area. It was less abandoned than the first wing they came from. The railings and steel floor were clean, free from much rust, and the walls were lined with signs that, while incredibly dirty, were recent and hastily scruffed to show their warnings. Several doors lined the hall, and Cloudcover tested one of them. It was welded completely shut.
Hey, this one's not closed.
Cloud turned towards Corona. He stood next to a big set of double doors. While padlocked, the Colt was right in the fact that the door's jamb was just free from the welding. She tugged on the handle, shaking the door on its hinges. The lock was fairly new, and refused to give any pull away from the foal. Curious, she placed her ear against the door.
Leave this place.
Ah! Cloud kicked back from the door, scrambling against Corona.
Something just spoke to me. I didn't hear anything. Let me check.
The pale orange Pegasus rested his head against the door, concentrating. Cloudcover shook.
Nothing. Hello?
Corona spoke to the door's crack.
Is anyone there?
He replaced his ear.
Well? Nope, nothing. You're hearing things. What is in this room, anyway?
Cloudcover shook her head, forcing herself to ignore her fear. She looked around the gate for some sort of indication on the room's purpose.
Horse crap, I heard things. Something spoke to me. I'm not going to be able to sleep for years after this. Here we go. What's that?
Some sort of plaque? Looks official. It says, Main Theater. The howl of 1,000 dying foals filled the hallways. Voices of colts and fillies of all ages, breeds crying out in eternal anguish. The screams of those met with their fate, never deserved by even the darkest of war criminals. The two foals shrunk, looking for some sort of source for the screams. They dragged on, the range of pitches fluctuating into some sort of messed-up song, an anthem of death and horror. It came from the floors, it came from the lights, the fog, and the hallway. Slowly, the two turned and faced the double doors. It came from the theater room. The screams didn't stop. Unlike the howling, they dragged on, joined by new shrieks as older ones died out. It took a long time, but eventually the sounds finally dwindled to one. Then nothing. They sat in silence, trying not to think. For a very long time, Cloudcover watched the broken vent, unblinking, lost in the constant stream of the fog. Corona rocked back and forth, focusing on his favorite games from the Academy sport events. What do you mean, escaped foals? They've got the whole prison set up upstairs. There's not a chance anyone can get down here. Shocked out of their thoughts by a sudden voice, the two jumped. Corona had actually started involuntarily flying.
Shh! Corona! Back into the fog, so they can't see us!
As the foals hid themselves, two white-coated stallions ambled around a corner. One was relaxed, his face loose and mocking. The other was agitated, his tail wagging at incredible speeds, foam dripping from his mouth. He spoke next, jabbing a hoof at his companion. Arf! Bark! Row! Bark! Well, granted, but I think you're starting to get out of your mind. The only way in or out of here is to take the service elevator, and even then you can only go up without Dr. Atmosphere or Rainbow Dash, so they're trapped here. We'll find them soon enough. You think so? Snow Crystal said she spooked one? Well, I've never seen her lie yet, so I guess I'm inclined to believe you. Check in the power room, then. Make sure there are no security breaches there. Celestia knows we'd hate to leave anyone steal those corporate secrets. Oh, I don't know. Maul them, I guess? I'll go back to the administration correction room, see if they're sending us a message. The agitated stallion saluted, letting out an incredible howl that echoed down the unforgiving corners of the facility. 3 other distinct yelps responded, and the pony burst forth towards the fog, right past the 2 foals. He skidded to a stop, snorting and sniffing, and Cloud watched the worker turn and stare right at her. Tentatively, he stalked towards her, his buggy eyes dead set on her location. She tried hard to control her hastening breaths, gulping as her heart pounded so hard she felt the beats would give her away. It was over. The worker could clearly see cloud cover by now. Sure, she and Corona were about to lose whatever war they had found themselves fighting. She gave up and spoke.
Nice, doggy?
The worker burst into a huge smile, panting. Cloudcover reached up, a shaking hoof, and stroked the stallion's mane. He licked her leg, then turned and continued his gallop towards the power room.
What the feathering flock just happened? I have no idea, but we should follow him. What? Through there? Did you catch that pony's crazy? I'm not going through that fog again. Look at it this way. We can walk in plain sight of the possibly only sane Pegasus with no fog and plenty of light, and even if we don't get caught, we still have no idea where we're headed. And there's obviously a bunch of ponies here. Now they're out to get us, and... All right, you made your point. The Colt looked ahead into the fog. It loomed in front of him, his opacity taunting him. Look at it, Corona thought. It's saying I can't handle it. He swallowed his fear in the mist, the taste in his mouth bitter and foul. Well, I'll show it, I guess. What? Pay attention, Cloud. Corona started, leaping into the air and sailing forward. We're going back to the junction, remember? Dr. Atmosphere leaned back in his chair, running a hoof along his stubbly chin. His eyes narrowed in deep thought. All around him, his office sat in disrepair. The walls were faded, the clouds no longer a bleached white, but rather stained, yellow from the absorption of sweat and smoke. Once, long ago, these walls had held great memories for Hyde, but those had vanished along with the brilliant cleanliness the clouds used to boast. Now the grungy vapors recalled horrible pasts, histories that haunted the Doctor more than any evil he had ever done. Every angle of this cage held a story. Hyde noticed a small speck of dried blood on his left. All that reminded of him was a old co-worker. An industrial accident, unavoidable. One of the so-called maintenance-free piping systems had overpressurized from a grease buildup.
decidedly to equalize itself into the muzzle of Atmosphere's most prized employee. She had died in his hooves, on his desk, the very same desk he now rests his rear legs on. A twinge of sadness threatened to enter his mind, but he forced it out. "No time for that, Hyde," he sighed, turning from the stain. On the other wall lay a deep black gouge in the clouds. He could have fixed it years ago, but refused to go close to it. That was the result of the first employee who dared to fight the system. He had fought back, believing that the doctor's office lay next to the elevator. The stallion's last resort was to blow a hole through the Teflon-infused clouds. "Good old Pegasus engineering," Hyde muttered, ignoring the image of his blackened office. He got his new desk after that, but the scent of singed fur refused to leave his nostrils. So many deaths. So many lives lost. Lives that mattered. Not those pathetic excuses for ponies. Actual lives. All intended for greatness. And why? So the fractured remains of a mare can continue to delude herself, trick her mind into accepting that the loyalty to the corporation is enough to keep her title, that as long as she remains true to an idea or belief of some kind, she'll forever be an element of harmony. Well, I have bad news, Dash.
And what would that be, Doctor?
Hyde jumped, kicking everything off of his desk, and falling backwards into a panic. With a heavy grunt, his head collided with the wall behind him. His vision faded momentarily. He opened his eyes, only to find the most terrifying set of rose irises he had ever seen.
Well, go on then. Bad news generally means that I need to kick in the management skills. I am the best. You know, you've seen it. So let's not delay with it.
Hello, Miss Dash.
Don't toy with me, Hyde!
For the first time in his aged life, the doctor cringed. A whimper slipped his muzzle. Incredibly quiet, almost non-existent, but a whimper all the same. All the pride Hyde had ever felt in his life flowed out of him with that cry. Shame taking his place. I've got Engage and Gentle to monitor any source we have from the old factory. Contrail and Pipe Wrench are taking the elevators down right now to do some field research.
That's redundant. Why would you set the clear thinkers in a room where they can't do anything?
So the nutters might decide on a whim to slaughter the two if they find them. You can outsmart a genius of any kind with faulty logic, but you can never outplay a creature that isn't playing the same game as you. And if the foals...
Failures.
Right. Sorry, my head is a little iffy right now.
Not my fault.
We... Never mind. If the failures manage to get around Contrail, Gentle and Gage can notify the other two as to where the resources have gotten to. Dash squinted at the stallion, very aware of the sweat dripping off his coat.
And the bad news?
Well, we don't know where they are downstairs.
Hardly an issue. That's why we're setting up your crew to do this. What's the real bad news, Hyde?
The stallion turned his head from Dash, thinking. The black gouge in the clouds caught his eye, and an idea struck him. It's entirely possible that we may be dealing with clever fools, failures as they may be, but let me finish. And so, we do not know what to expect. Somehow they managed to break through a ventilation shaft that had been built to never be opened. Who knows what they could manage with the old technology stored downstairs. Tartarus Dash. It's all compatible with our tech up here. We're running on millennia-old inflation.
Nonsense, Doctor. I showed you just this morning. All of our technology is cutting edge.
That's the issue, really. Atmosphere sighed. Rainbow Dash shrugged, turning from the fallen pony.
Curious, but not important. I want those escapees caught and killed within 24 hours. Understood?
And what of the contingency plan?
I'll activate it if, and only if, there is no other option. Get it?
Got it.
Good.
Dash hopped up and flapped out of the room, kicking the desk back into hide as she lifted off. With a useful spin, she slammed the door closed with her tail. Dr. Atmosphere lay on the floor in silence. He gently rested his head against the cloud wall, closing his eyes again. Cutting-edge technology indeed, but all outdated. Equinity as a whole could be so much further in the future, but it suffers from the inconsolable rage of a broken and lonely Pegasus. Question my loyalty to the corporation, you foolish blue pony. All I need is you out of the way, and I can push the limits of this factory to new heights. I can perfect the planet and set Equestria on the path to new domination. All I need you to do is move past your Celestia-damned, petty-bucking issues. You stupid, stupid mare. This whole mess is your fault. We could be brilliant. The stallion stood up, wiping down his coat and fixing his spiked mane. Oh, Dash. Rainbow Dash. It hurts me to see you like this. I remember who you used to be. Who you still could be. You need to go, but I want you to stay. Dash. Look at me. I'm just a blubbering idiot. The doctor smashed the wall. The clouds absorbed the blow and noise, much to Hyde's dissatisfaction. Well, no sense beating an old horse. Might as well get to work. I've got a future to engineer. Hyde flipped his lab coat on with a flourish, and extended a sigh, rushing from him as he slowly walked out of the room, limping from the fall. He mumbled to himself, more tales of distant memories, more exasperated hopes for what the Pegasus race could have been a lifetime ago. He did not notice the blue face in the hall, obscuring a grayed rainbow mane. Gentle struggled to hear Gage's explanation over the howling wind. There wasn't much she couldn't figure out herself about the cavernous room. The incredible cyclone in the center was obviously the source of all the wind and air movements in the kingdom. Barring that wondrous display, Gentle tracked the incredible circuits of tubes and transport systems lining the walls, all the way into the bowels of the factory. Great pumps shook with incredible violence, only adding to the catastrophic noise. From them hung aged power cords, the weight of them alone threatening to rip out other plugs and slip down to their sources below. We must be getting close to the control room. This is all major technology. Gentle shouted to the stallion ahead. The Pegasus took no notice of her words and continued screaming information that was lost immediately to the wind. Stopping, he indicated a large steel door before practically pushing the mare out of the cyclone room. And this is the cyclone room, Gage concluded matter-of-factly. I hope you remember what I just told you, too. It's incredibly vital to the continued experience and existence of this factory. Actually, I couldn't hear anything. You'll have to repeat it. Oh, there's no time for that. I'll tell you later. But you just... Gage winked at the mare before continuing forward. Gage went forward, and Gentle shook her head, following the orange stallion as she glanced in awe at the room. One single computer console stretched around the three walls in front of her. Various switches and enlarged buttons filled every ounce of space on the gray instrument. But what caught the Pegasus' eye most was the far wall. A massive television screen hung in the clouds through some unseen mechanism. Hundreds upon hundreds of wires ran into the monitor, a digital spiderweb. The Cloudsdale Weather Corporation logo. 3 smokestacks upon a cloud striking lightning, glowing on a black background upon it. Gentle had become so accustomed to the logo that she never paid any attention to it, much like any other citizen of Cloudsdale. Now, in its giant and official display, it appeared to be the most foreboding image she had ever seen in her life. Below the screen, 2 seats awaited occupants, and Gage offered a chair to the green pony before sitting himself. The confusing keyboards and electronics that filled the rest of the computer were absent under the screen. Laid out next to each seat were, instead, a large trackball, a pad of arrow keys, and 10 brightly lit square buttons. The stallion slid his chair forward and rested a hoof on the trackball. His left hoof hovered over the adjacent keys. Tapping the ball, and the screensaver gave way to a desktop of sorts. Gentle could hardly read the options Gage was choosing as he maneuvered his way through the operating system. But she focused even harder, her eyes darting around as she followed the cursor and highlighted words. With one final tap, the screen came to a halt, split 3 ways between different video feeds. Each feed was almost pitch black, with only the slightest unique feature separating them. One seemed to capture a stream of fog, the undistributed mist billowing, a phantom serpent in the dungeons below. The middle showed a plain hallway and scaffolding that was mostly inconspicuous, save for a single vent grating lying skewed on the floor. Gage highlighted that one and zoomed in, aiming the camera to closer inspect the vent. Her coworker was speaking again, but Gentle didn't pay any attention. She examined the old factory, tracing the rusted and grime-covered pipes as they snaked in infinite directions, without the faintest hint of logic or design. It's as if, for over 1,000 years, they just added lines wherever they needed to, as direct as possible. Sweet Celestia, that facility is a logistical nightmare. Look, like here, where they've got cloud particles heading in completely opposite directions from the hail seeds. These products could be mixed together and use one common line until they reach their specific destinations. If there's any sense in the architecture down there, the hail room production should be fairly close to the cloud recycling annex, and a simple filter system could redirect the seeds. It's so inefficient. The orange worker was staring at Gentle, his eyes wide in impression beyond blonde bangs. It's no surprise why Hyde hired you. In ancient times, I suppose, it was considered more efficient to have direct lines rather than waste time rebuilding the whole piping system every time we added machinery. If Dash heard you calling this company inefficient... Gage leaned back, whistling. Shaking his head, he chuckled. Well, as long as you can manage to describe a way to increase efficiency for Cloudsdale weather, you should be fine. Now come on, pay attention. We've got to learn how to use this system. What are we doing anyway? 2 failures escaped earlier today while we were in Contrail's room. This must have been the vent they fell down in. I was hoping they'd have been knocked unconscious, but it appears they woke up and scampered off. Regardless, we need to locate them for Contrail and Pipe Wrench to apprehend. Alive, according to Atmosphere. He says Dash wants them relatively unharmed so she can process them herself. The stallion frowned, switching the screen to another camera. A junction presented itself. The tail end of the stream of fog poured into the center, out of sight. That's odd. We should incapacitate them as soon as possible. You too, Gage? I thought out of all the workers here, you were the most sympathetic. There's more to it than just murdering foal. There! The Pegasus leapt out of her seat, her wings exploding in excitement. 2 small ponies burst out of the fog, flying as fast as they could. Gage stopped his sentence, immediately tapping through the various cameras until he caught sight of the failures. They were moving fairly fast, but seemingly without direction. Looks like they're headed for the elevator. Hopefully just by chance. Notify the other 2, will you? That PA system. Over there. Gentle glanced at the colorful buttons, finding one with a clear symbol for a loudspeaker. Holding it down, she spoke. Workers Pipe Wrench and Contrail, this is Control. Confirmed sighting of escapees heading in your direction. Capture alive. Repeat, capture alive. Dash does not want them dead. Corona halted immediately, dropping like a rock below cloud cover. The filly turned sharply, hovering next to her friend as she scolded him.
You stupid colt. We don't have time to hang around. Come on! No, stop. Didn't you hear that? That voice? Yeah, they're probably calling ponies to look for us, which is why we need to move. Now. They spotted us, Cloud. They said we were heading in their direction, and... something about capture? Someone wants us dead. Couldn't hear it all. We don't want to go that way.
The lavender foal landed, stomping a hoof in fright and frustration.
Well, we can't go ahead, and we can't go back because someone there spotted us. So where from here, Corona? If it's a mind game, what if they, saw we were escaping and wanted us to think that the exit leads straight to our doom? You need to slow down and think. I'm always the one doing the thinking.
Corona turned to the filly and slapped her with a hoof. She looked up, horrified.
You. I hit you. Because I know you're scared and I know it looks bleak. But right now, we have no room for hating each other. And maybe you are right. Maybe you are always thinking and that's your problem. You don't trust your gut. That's why you failed your test, Cloud. You didn't trust your own body. And now you don't trust me. Learn to take a leap of faith, Cloud.
Tears had been welling up in the Pegasus's eyes. But at Corona's final statement, she opened them wide.
Leap of faith? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't really think of a better way to describe... a leap of faith!
Cloud yelled, hopping into the air and kicking Corona until he followed suit. A second later, her friend was in the air. She dived over the edge of the scaffolding.
Cloud, wait!
Corona looked over the edge, staring down into oblivion. He had lost his friend, and it was his words that urged her on. Things were happening too fast. The colt had no idea what to do, and soon the workers would be there to cart him away. He started shaking.
Well, are you going to hover there in terror, or are you going to follow me?
Corona looked down between his legs, and laughed in relief as he caught sight of Cloud's eyes.
You sneaky little Pegasus.
We'll head in the other end of the floor. If there's workers there, we can double back.
And, if we need to double back, we can hopefully fly under those coming back under us. A leap of faith, Corona. Let's get out of here.
Oh, for flock's sake, the orange stallion swore.
What is it? Where did they go?
Under the scaffolding. And these old cameras don't have a good enough resolution to make out underneath the grating. Clever punks.
So what now?
Well, they obviously heard the announcement, which caused them to stop. The next logical course of action would be to get one of the two down there to fly under the floor and try to catch them. Preferably, it would be Pipe Wrench, because Contrail would somehow manage to walk upside down or something. Only problem is, I have no idea how to inform Pipe Wrench to do that without alerting those failures again. Gentle squinted.
Show me those two if you can.
A second later, two very bored-looking Pegasi appeared on the screen. One was leaning against the railing, the other was lazily flying loop-de-loops around the first.
Is that hail seed pipe still flowing?
Probably not, but it can be. Let me just... The stallion brought up a generic schematic for this facility. Gentle was blown away by the scale of the entire building. Despite seeing it almost every day since she was born, the Thunderhead obscured much of it, and that it was impossible to tell how complex and massive the corporation really was. Gage highlighted the old factory, and then the section Pipe Wrench and Contrail resided in. A map of every pipe popped up on the screen, and the orange Pegasus scrolled the cursor over the particular line Gentle had mentioned, activating it. The gray output turned green, and the hail seeds began flowing. There. You've got control with that specific conduit. Don't know what happened to that line. Could still be connected to the generator for all I know. What do you need it for? Gentle didn't reply, studying the controls that had lit up next to her. After a moment, she rested both forehooves on the keys, and turned back to the screens.
Let me see that video feed again. Can you overlay the diagram on the video?
You bet. And there you go. Gage looked questioningly at the mare. You sure you know what you're doing? What are you doing anyway? The diagram turned bright red as Gentle locked off the valve that was just slightly higher than the railing. After a brief hesitation, she turned on several other pumps connected to the line, ignoring the several warnings that flashed on the screen. An incredibly loud alarm started chattering next to the ponies, but both were too concentrated on the television to notice it.
Pipe wrench!
Stop it.
Got a wrench. Wrenchy, wrenchy, wrench.
I said stop it.
More like gripe wrench.
Make fun of my name one more time and you'll be a real contrail. Got it?
Clever. I like it. Gripe wrench. Did you hear that?
Hear what?
That. Groaning. Stretching. Sounds like a good mare in bed. But really, pressure. Pipe wrench, stop it. It helps it's loud. Where's it coming from? Not good. Pipe wrench, fix it. Fix the valve. Pipe, fix the valve. Pipe.
What in the Tartarus is you going on about? It was at that moment that the valve next to the stallion split, launching the constant stream of incredibly dense orbs into the opposite wall. Pipe wrench stumbled backwards, landing on top of Contrail as the stallion screamed and clapped his hooves in foolish joy at the same time. The stream seemed to rise and fall as the pressure varied constantly, instead of relieving itself at a constant rate. What? Gage watched, completely stunned. Gentle was entirely focused on the viewing screens, her hooves twitching minutely on the trackpad and keys. Her forelegs lacked any structure, flowing like a snake over water as the mare calculated her movements. Every once in a while there would be an unwanted movement, a curse, and a flurry of competitive actions with a sigh of relief. She's learning the pressure system variations at an astonishing rate. Gage forced himself to blink, taking glances at the screen so fast he was liable to end up with whiplash. It took all his effort to stop staring at his coworker. What is she doing?
And that should do it.
With one last triumphant slap of the keys, Gentle twirled in her seat, whooping in victory. She paused when she noticed Gage's slack jaw and snapped her wings back in embarrassment.
Those controls are actually kind of similar to the ones down, yeah.
The orange pony blinked several times, shook his head, and slowly managed to turn back to the job at hand. What was that all about?
Look,
the mare said, glancing obviously to the video feed, tossing her head in its direction.
the wall. Look at the wall opposite the pipe. Wrench. It's for you. It's a sign from above. Get it? Sign from above? Management's up there, watching us, watching everyone. Always watching and controlling and changing, and now there's words for you! Wrench, read the words, and follow the wrench orders. From above, wrench, and...
Contrail's rant was ended with a quick butt to his left wing, causing him to lose his lift and plummet down towards the unforgiving belly of the old factory. Pipe Wrench watched the blue stallion fall out of sight, before turning and reading the letters etched onto the tough cloud. But I'll be damned. They did it. It was simple cursive. The cloud read out, Pipe Wrench, fly under scaffolding, intercept failure. Show off. The stallion stretched his wings, popping his stiff back before taking off. A low groan escaped his muzzle while he aligned himself under the railing, partly from the pain associated with his old back, and partly from seeing a sky-blue Pegasus standing upside down in front of him.
Boo!
Get on top, Contrail. Stay with me, and if you see him, drive him under towards me.
On it, Captain Mumble!
Contrail saluted with a wing before plummeting a second time. Pipe Wrench listened until the echoes of unbroken laughter faded away before flying forward, flapping his wings hard in annoyance. One of these days I'm gonna clip those wings of his. Crazy idiot. Satisfied the two had gotten their message, Gentle and Gage relaxed, flipping through the video screens for any sign of the escapees.
So what happens next, Gage?
Hmm?
What happens next? Once we capture them, that is. Do they just get tossed back into the pile and made into rainbows?
The stallion was silent. He wrapped a strand of his long mane around a hoof, twirled it in deep concentration. After eternity, he spoke. Not quite.
What's worse for a foal in
Failure.
What's worse for a failure in here? I know they're bad for Cloudsdale and all, but do we really need to demonize them as much as we do? Failures as they may be, they're just scared kids. You'd try to run too. It's not like you'd have an ulterior motive to bring down Pegasus society or anything, they just... Gage?
Gentle paused, tilting her head to catch Gage's expression. He was completely furious. His legs were tense in anger, eyes low to the ground. You just don't get it, do you?
Gage, are you?
No, you don't. He sighed, brushing his long mane onto his back to clearly look at the mare. We have a duty, Gentle. Not just a job, a duty to the corporation, to Cloudsdale, to the Pegasi around the planet. We are so fragile, you know? Very, very fragile. Out of any of the races of ponies, the Pegasi are the absolute weakest. What happens when an Earth pony breaks a leg? Gentle had recoiled, doing her best not to whimper in light of Gage's sudden temper. She opened her muzzle to speak, but was immediately cut off. They're put down. Sure, an adult can be fixed with magic, but a foal grows too fast. You can't repair it. What use is an Earth pony who can't even walk? So they get put down. Same with unicorns. Same thing. Break a leg in your youth, and your life is over anyways. So it's the end for you. But no. Pegasi, we are something special. You break your wing. You don't develop them properly. Or you just simply can't use them well enough to stay in flight. What use are you? But you can walk, of course. So the rest of the ponies say you can stay alive. They just don't know just how important, important wings are to us. A Pegasus without wings is like an Earth pony without legs. They don't get it. How incredibly weak we really are. And thank for Celestia for that. Because if they did, what then? They could break us so easily, and take advantage of everything we hold dear. So we defend our reputation.
Like any race in Equestria would ever attack enough...
You think that, don't you? Think about it, though. You can't murder a healthy pony in equestrian soil. It's why they live so long. If you didn't know. Unicorns, as well. They've got the whole magic thing going on. Laser beams from their head and defense spells that an entire army of changelings could just barely break through. The Pegasi, well, we can fly. Aerial attack and support. The whole kingdom of Equestria is one of peace and love and happiness. But that's just a wallpaper covering up the mutual assured destruction, which is the real reason no one thinks we'd be attacked. What happens when they find out so many of us have trouble flying? Or just can't? Well, that's why we're here. Not to kill foals because it's fun. This isn't some bucked-up claim to glory. We're soldiers on the front lines, Gentle. Soldiers that can't give up, and can't allow ourselves to be broken. Because if we go down, if we don't stop these escapees, Gentle, if we fail... Think about that. If we fail. The corporation took on the responsibility of dealing with those who would destroy our only defense. And because of that, the corporation stands to be the downfall of Pegasi, the end of the flock, if we do not succeed. We are soldiers, and we have to fight until our last breath leaves our lungs, and then throw our weapons in till our vision dies. Those aren't foals. They're much more than failures. They're the death of our race, a nuclear weapon contained in the unassuming case of a pretty little foal. Gage was sobbing now, his phrases breaking as he cried into his hooves, his whole body shaking in emotion, his orange fur damp with sweat, his muscles twitching uncontrollably as he ranted. We're all that stand in the way. Those... Oh, Luna, those damned failures. The damage they could do if they made it out in the air would be irreparable and create an enemy impossible to crush. So we must retaliate preemptively, and even though it is awful and horrible and against the very concept that keeps us equine, we must do it. For the end justifies the means, and the end will always justify the means, no matter how soul-crushing and awful and evil we must be to do it. Gage's words were indecipherable. Gentle reached out to touch him, but a strong hoof pressed down on her shoulder, causing her to pause. Looking up behind her, she saw Dr. Atmosphere, his face stern and seemingly unaffected. Yet deep in his eyes, Gentle could see the same pain Gage was suffering from. Don't. He spoke calmly, putting the mare's foreleg back. Just leave him be. But he gets this way from time to time. There's nothing you can do. Look, now back to work. Take his seat. Gentle awkwardly stood up and nudged the uncontrollable stallion onto the floor. He moved smoothly, as if he'd practiced the same motions many times in the past, and simply wrapped himself around Gentle's hind legs as she settled down. Hyde continued to speak quietly, so as not to disturb the worker on the floor. His voice was gentle, motheringly, and soon the green Pegasus was focused back to her work, guided by her supervisor. The fools met up with Pipe Wrench and have started to flee, he explained calmly. Drive them towards the power room. Can I ask why, sir? The rumors are true. Gentle swallowed hard, deciding not to pursue that line of questioning any further. With the doctor's calming directions, she quickly fell back into her work, opening valves of steam and even going so far as to destroy small sections of hallway to guide the failures to Hyde's set goal. Pain twinged at her heart whenever the failures' faces were caught on camera, but the mare was quick to change to another angle of viewing. This is also wrong. There's no way a foal could do that kind of damage to... She looked at Gage, who was unmoving now, and still clenching her hind legs with an intensity she was sure would bruise her. A quiver of his wings caught her eye, and with it an explosion of memory. Flight, soaring, pure bliss, unequivocal happiness. The blocked sun heating her primaries, and the wind blasting her secondaries. The buffeting air rippling and teasing the underside of her wings so perfectly it was practically sexual in nature. The entire kingdom of Equestria below her hooves, so small as if it was nothing, featureless, or obscured by a straw, low-flying crowd. Each downbeat of her wings drove her forward, doubling her joy, chilling her hooves and whipping her mane in a brilliant, though short, massage. It was orgasmic. Then a change. The wings vanish, atomized into dust with an unsuspecting downbeat. Gravity's merciless claw bursting from the ground like a demon and clenching at its prey, her, and ripping her out of the sky. Falling is not the same as flying. There is no joy, no bliss, only chaos and fear and time to contemplate your own death. And then, the ground. Gentle shook her head, and no longer was she in her dream, her terrible nightmare that had haunted her childhood, much like almost every other foal. Every Pegasus had some variation of that night terror, as common as an earth pony dreaming about their teeth falling out. He's wrong, Hyde. The stallion looked down curiously, his expression cautiously inquisitive.
Well, kinda. There's no threat from other nations. We won't be destroyed in some great war. That's silly.
Gentle, please. I don't like where this is going. You had a choice when we...
But we will fall.
Huh?
If they get out and tell their story. Never mind Cloudsdale or the flock, but the entire Pegasus race. Every single Pegasi. Even the failures and those not born in our city, well, we will fall. We fall from good standing and trust, and we fall from honor, love, and everything worth living for. There's nothing worse than plunging without control.
The stallion nodded, his stubble and wrinkled face an image of sage. And so to avoid falling,
we must remove those that can take our wings away.
They're almost there now. Back to work. Cloud's mind was a train wreck. Things were going so well not 10 minutes earlier. Pride at her smart thinking had lifted her spirits. Momentarily, she felt like a great big exit sign were going to appear at any second along her flight under the trail. Then a stallion came racing towards them, his teeth bared with a satisfied grin which Cloud knew could only mean trouble. Somehow the workers had managed to figure out where Corona and she were without the loudspeaker announcing it. Panic gripped her, and without thinking she had whipped around up top, only to almost collide with a sky-blue Pegasus that was pretending to walk 3 feet above the ground. As soon as the stallion had spotted her, his eyes bugged wide, and he burst into full trot. Completely stationary at first, but after a second he bolted forward in pursuit of the failures. Cloudcover had dived back underneath, taking off beside Corona, trying her best to keep up with the much faster Colt. Her heart pounded heavy in her chest, the throbbing driving her wing beats until she could see the stream of fog filling in the distance. If we can get there, we can hide from these freaks. At that very moment, a pipe burst and groaned, singeing her right forehoof. All along the path to the intersection, steel tubing was exploding, their various contents spraying out and blocking any possible passage. Cursing, Corona steered hard to the right in front of Cloudcover, and the filly followed suit. A cloud supported around the corner forced the two to flip back on top of the railing, and behind the lavender Pegasus she could see the 2 workers in hot pursuit. Conduits continued to detonate in front of them. At one particular junction there was enough force to bring the roof down on another passageway.
This can't be by chance. What's causing this? Why is the factory just disassembling itself? Corona! Little busy, Cloud. Corona, did you hit any valve or something? Smack a switch or clip a pipe? If you're asking me if I did this, you got the wrong... Duck!
Midway through his sentence, the Colt had noticed a series of vertical pipes, bulging in very much the way that steel should never bulge. With perfect timing, the metal disintegrated, releasing a hurricane of pressurized air beside the failures. The combined momentum of their forward movement and the blast wave slammed them both into an aluminum vent, which crumbled immediately under their weight. After a brief, disorientated tumble, they dropped from the ceiling onto the unforgiving floor for the second time that day. Cloudcover was first to stand up, her mind reeling as she quickly tried to make heads or tails of what had happened.
Whoa. Cloud. Check that out. What is that? Like some sort of vat you see in those alien movies.
The filly rolled her eyes.
Celestia needs to grow up. If the corporation would have any ALE... Oh, what do you know? It totally does.
A massive vat of light green, bubbly liquid stood in front of them, its metal base full of hoses and wires jutting in and out, without any regard to sane engineering. It was sitting to the right of an almost as large machine that was a strange amalgamation of pistons, cylinders, and blocky additions, all tied to the vat with as much logic as the bases. The lights in the room slowly flickered, on automatically, illuminating 5 more giant pillars of whatever it was Cloudcover was looking at. She could glean no purpose from the giant containers, aside from the slime green, soda pop appearing mixture that was absolutely nothing inside them. Nor, she had noticed, were any of the machines vibrating or making noise despite clearly being some kind of engine. The room was totally silent, and for the first time in hours the mare felt safe.
What is this place?
Corona questioned, walking slowly amongst the mysterious objects. He craned his neck, following 3-foot-thick power cords that erupted from the engines and disappeared into the roof.
Gotta be electrical of some kind, I guess.
But Cloudsdale uses wind power exclusively, Cloud announced.
Why would they need generators on a scale this industrial? Even if this building wasn't self-supportive, I can't see the corporation needing 6 machines this powerful. And what are those vats all about?
Maybe I can help you figure that out. Corona was standing next to the front of the room, pointing at a small computer console. A jumbled mess of wires fell out of its base, scattering like cockroaches into the depths of the room behind it. Despite the confusion below, the computer itself was relatively simple. A small monitor sat above a basic keyboard, its screen caked in dust and scratches. Through the grime, Cloud could see faint lettering, as she propped her forehooves on the desk to inspect it. CWC Power Grid Control. Enter command. It read, a tiny cursor blinking next to the prompt. The filly typed a word and hit enter. The computer responded with an annoyed-sounding tone. She tried another, only to get the same result.
Hold on. Let me try...
Cloud settled into the decrepit chair and tried phrase after phrase into the console. Anything she could think of that might be a viable command. After dozens of errors, the tone finally changed to a more successful note, when the Pegasus looked close at the screen again. System status. Sustained resources holding. Biological reactor systems unnecessary. On standby. Last peak drain from sector Cyclone 1. Enter command.
Big words I don't have time for.
Corona sighed, walking away from the system.
It's probably better for us to just look for a way out instead of mucking with a computer that we don't know how to use.
You're probably right, Cloud conceded, smacking the keyboard and walking away. The speakers blared at the filly, who responded in turn with a curse of her own.
So let's once again consider our situation.
We were obviously driven in here.
Why, I have no idea. This place is huge, dark, and totally illogical. Not to mention a tripping hazard,
the Colt offered, shuffling some cords around.
Is there some kind of building code against exit signs? I just want to go home.
He sighed.
Us too.
The two fools scrambled back at the third voice, catching their hooves on power lines and tumbling to the ground. They furiously worked at shuffling back, only trapping themselves further in the electrical tentacles. Cloudcover was the first to give up, closing her eyes against her fate.
Are you two okay? You're outside the cage. How did you do that?
The lavender filly opened her eye, struggling to see in the awful lighting. There was a scrawny stallion staring at her, his muzzle pressed down between iron bars about 10 feet away from her. His fur was a ghostly white, glowing brighter than the fixtures in the ceiling.
Are you new? Did you escape? Or did they send you here?
Cloud was speechless, her mind blank as more and more ponies walked out of the blackness and into her field of vision. Dozens of them, foals and adults alike, all with incredibly rare or obscene color schemes. Some purely white, many black, one even clear, his pink flesh shining through a glass-like coat. Their eyes bulged outwards, strained and hungry, like they were from some other world.
Why would they have sent them here, though? They have color. They must have escaped. Down here, though? Nice escape. Be nice. The only hope we have. How'd you get away? Did you kill some pony? Oh, Celestia, they killed someone. They're as bad as the workers. Guys, leave them alone. We don't know they did anything yet.
Cloudcover shook her head clear and started tangling herself from the cords. She shouted for silence and quickly ran over to Corona, helping him free. As she worked, the Colt whispered in her ear.
Cloud, what's going on? Where did they come from? What do we do now?
Why is everyone asking me questions? She hissed, pulling her friend up. Struggling to hold back her disgust, she walked up to the white stallion. He looked down at her, his face still squeezed between the metal rods, flattening his head. Can you help us? Cloud asked. We don't know how to get out. The stallion was silent, unblinking. Please? After a long pause, he finally spoke. You're asking a group of starving, broken Pegasi trapped behind bars to help you escape. And the filly looked at her hooves. I thought maybe you'd be sympathetic to the cause? Maybe if you offered to return the favor. Okay, whoa. Corona stepped in. This is moving way too fast. Since it currently looks like we're all doomed, no one's agreeing to do anything unless we get more information. Question period, guys. Why are you lot down here and not up there with the others? Your friend is smart, the white pony murmured, turning to the Colt. I can't promise all the information, just what we've overheard from the workers. Is that all right? Of course. We can't return the favor. We've basically been running scared for the last 5 hours. Admirable time, was the reply. The rest of the jailed ponies murmured in agreement. We're the failures that are too useless to be murdered. Well, not immediately, that is. The colors in our skin were either non-existent or not cost-effective to be harvested, so we're locked down here instead. How'd you two get away? That should be impossible. Harvesting colors? Cloud and Corona looked at each other. Answer our question, we'll answer yours. There was a damaged vent in that room where they tried to gas us. We managed to dive down that. Bad idea. There's only one way out of that section. The elevator. Opposite wing from the main theater room. The two fools jumped back at the mention of the theater room. What's the main theater room? What's in there? Why is it locked? What are they doing there? The stallion stepped back from the bars, tilting his head at the two. Nothing. Now. Nothing for a very long time, as far as I know. Got some sort of historical significance. And there's... Never mind. It's not important. Silly stories the kids tell to stay entertained. How did you make it into this room? A blast from a bunch of pipes knocked us through another wall. Cloudcover looked down at her wing, testing the burnt tip. It stung, but it was otherwise perfectly functional. The rest of her body, however, screamed in pain. What was all that about harvesting colors? Don't tell them, Snowflake. They're obviously a trap designed to find out who knows the most. It's a test, buddy. The Pegasus whipped around, glaring at a quivering black stallion. It was hardly noticeable save for his deep, green eyes, the orbs appearing to levitate in the darkness, filled with fear and hate. They're testing us. They are. Trying to find out who'd be willing to help if a failure did escape. Why else would they drop in like that? No filly would be so insensitive to ask to help to escape and not offer anything in return. Cloudcover's heart panged at the comment, and she ducked further into herself. Leave it, Inversion. Let them be. But they... I said leave it be! Snowflake turned back to Cloud and Corona, shaking his head. I trust you, so hopefully you'll repay that. The corporation, as far as we've heard, uses failures to harvest their colors. Pulls spectra right out of your body, sucks you dry and leaves you dead. And as for us, well, we help power it all. And how do you do that? The door burst open, flooding the room with light. Corona took to the air, grabbing Cloudcover mid-sentence and pulling her behind one of the incredibly large power lines that led out from a generator. The imprisoned ponies scuffled back, returning to their corners. Many huddled together. A few rocked back and forth, and one started crying. Snowflake retreated slightly, but stood his ground facing the workers that had entered. Thankfully, Cloud realized as she watched a reflection in the generator that hadn't been seen. At the same time, the workers from earlier, the agitated one continuing to wag his tail at incredible speed. Now, as well, he was sniffing the air viciously. His eyes squinted, searching. The other worker sighed, pulling a set of keys from his lab coat. He approached the cell, surveying all the frightened Pegasi trapped within. Guess what time it is, fillies and colts?
One day you'll pay for this, you scoundrels!
Please, Blanky. The very same goes for you and the rest of those flat tones. Now, who's going to do their due diligence to the corporation today? The barking worker growled under his breath and breathed deeply. The blank eyes locked onto cloud cover again, staring straight through the insulated copper she'd hid behind. A light ruff escaped his muzzle, but he looked back and bared his teeth at the prisoners.
Take the escapees!
Inversion had stood up, his legs shaking in panic.
Take them! They're the ones you're looking for! They're just behind the generator, right over there! That butt knows! I saw him!
Draw your trap, you Blanky. We're not here for them.
But they'll escape. We let them know, you know. So, if you don't use them instead of this whole thing, we'll come crashing down.
The black stallion was defiant now, his legs strong as he shouted back at the workers. He walked closer to the iron bars, joy in his eyes as he built his case.
What are we? We're already captured. Take them, not one of us. Just look behind the cords. You'll see.
Why would we use a perfectly colorful foal for power? That's silly.
But they're dangerous. To all of us.
With split-second reflexes, the worker whipped out a cradle prod from his coat, catching Inversion in the neck. He collapsed instantly, no longer able to talk. The worker opened the gate to the cage, allowing Mr. Agitated to jump in and back the rest off. He ambled in, hooked the black stallion's leg with a rope, and, whistling, waltzed out of the cage, dragging Inversion behind him. He held his end of the rope in his mouth as he started up the ladder that circled the massive vat on the nearest generator. Inversion started to regain motion as the worker latched the rope onto a hook and slammed the switch up, knocking the hook into gear. It lifted the struggling stallion high over the bubbling liquid and, despite his screaming and failing, dropped him into the vat. Cloudcover struggled not to throw up as she watched the black flesh dissipate immediately, and the vapors bubbling up to the surface and flowing through the pipes into the generator. The vibrations from the engines shook the filly's insides, resonating her revulsion at the display before her. Chunks of muscle fell off tendon and bone, vanishing in their ascent. The acid worked slowly, providing Cloud with a brilliant lesson in equine anatomy as it rendered each layer of tissue. The thrashing torso was eventually obscured by a cloud of red fluid, which quickly turned brown and then cleared away as the slime ate at Inversion with an impossible ferocity. Soon a skeleton drifted slowly to the bottom of the vat, and then the vat was empty again. That should handle the load for the next couple of batches of failures. Y'all get some food tomorrow. Maybe. If you blankies keep your muzzles shut. Help those escapees all you want, by the way. Dash has better plans for them. Atmosphere don't make much sense, he muttered to the side. Whatever an SEP. Come on, Runt.
Arf! Someone else's problem.
The stallion tossed the keys into the computer desk on his way out, slamming the door behind him. The room was silent for a very long time.
That can't have been on purpose. That could have been an accident, Cloud. That was what I just... Never mind.
Well? Snowflake whispered, his face pressed to the bars again.
Will you help us? We'll return the favor any way we can. This is an obvious trap.
One can only steal the cheese by setting off the spring, my friends. Of course it's a trap. But I think if we screw up their plans royally enough, we can make it out. We can finally leave this place, be free of the memory and pain if we outsmart them. What do you think? The two foals thought hard. On one hoof, Cloudcover contemplated. Running into a trap means deliberately getting caught. On the other, it may very well be the only way to get out of this hellhole without starving to death.
Deal. I'll grab the keys and...
No, that's too simple. They must be coming back soon. Of course, I have a better idea.
Oh?
There's a ghost that haunts these halls. Snowflake spoke matter-of-factly, without the slightest hint of sarcasm. One of a pony that escaped in the past. One of a pony that escaped and was captured and escaped again. For now their soul wanders these dark and gloomy tombs, searching only for a way to release their essence from the pain and sadness and evil that binds them here.
This guy's a nutter, Corona whispered.
Some of the old prisoners. Or they don't use us by order received. It's all on a whim. Speak of a time the ghost burst into the room before the workers cornered it, confronting it and causing it to vanish. His vision fulfilled. Before it passed, though, a shout was heard echoing throughout the entire room. Main theater room. We've heard stories of an awful history associated with that room. Nothing more than hushed reminders and threats, yet history regardless. Leave us here to defend your actions. We shall be able to convince the simple workers that you went the opposite way. Seek the theater room, find the ghost, and promise to assist it. In return, I'm sure you shall be rewarded the same. Go. Go now before the workers come back and spring the trap! Gage lay on the floor, a heavy blanket draped over his shivering body. Gentle set a mug of coffee on the ground next to the stallion, and he thanked her. She wiped the sweat from the base of her pink mane and dragged herself over to the musty couch in the center of the room, dropping onto it like a dead weight. Exhaustion overwhelmed her, encased her, seeped its draining tendrils into every pore of her body. She was mentally fatigued from forcing herself to understand the piping system, and immediately applying that knowledge. She was physically tired, not having slept since she started her shift downstairs so early in the morning. There are no clocks here. The thought drifted through her mind, but failed to register on any level. Her back ached from walking the orange stallion all the way from the control room to the dilapidated break room. Her legs shaky from navigating their entire way here without allowing herself to catch on a wire or hose. Gentle Butterwing was incredibly tired. Dr. Atmosphere leaned against the doorframe. It had been a long time since any of them had slept, and the dryness in the doctor's eyes stung. Even he, who had worked so many hours and become accustomed to life as an engineer, a willful slave to the corporation's manufacturing machines, could hardly stay on his four legs. His spiky gray mane was greasy and tuffled, a catastrophe on his head. Waves of sweat seemed to roll throughout his body as he forced himself to stand still. Hyde Atmosphere was incredibly tired. Gage's constitution had returned to him, but the after effects of his breakdown clung to the stallion's body. His eyes were strained red, as if the very sight of light were acid to his vision. The coffee helped dispel the awful chill that permeated him, but could not remove the coldness that gripped his bones tighter than death's own claws. He could hardly move. His internal torment had sucked the energy from his body and rendered him incapable of lifting a hoof. His mind raced, however, about meaningless thoughts and panics and anxieties that he knew didn't apply to him yet, threatened him all the same. A deep anger burned inside him, furious at himself for keeping himself awake when he so desperately needed to rest. Gage was incredibly tired. Dr. Atmosphere was the one to speak first. His normal, energetic, and intelligent voice was absent, replaced by a quivering and simple speech. Dash wants us to find those escapees, but all we can do is wait. He heard no reply, but the other two managed to turn their eyes to his. There will be a commotion of sorts, I'm sure of it. It is out of our hooves. Perhaps Pipe and Contrail may be able to capture them, but I sincerely doubt it is within their capabilities. Or their orders. With any luck, whatever escape plan those failures come up with succeeds as well as their flight tests did.
Hyde,
Yes, gentle.
we can't fail. We can't. We can't fall. Hyde, don't let us fall.
The blood-red pony groaned, lifting himself from the doorway. He forced his creaking joints to carry him next to the mare, and leaned in close, whispering, I'm going to carry us to heights unseen, gentle. We're going to rise. His head drooped for a final time, and the green Pegasus watched her supervisor collapse to the floor, shaking the table next to him. His snoring picked up, and lulled Gentle off to sleep. Corona walked softly ahead of Cloud, careful to mask his hoof steps on the hard metal floor. They were deep in the fog already, having found their way back to Snowflake's directions.
How are we ever going to get into the room anyways?
Open the lock? The Colt replied.
Yeah, but how are we going to open the lock?
Cloud's words were drenched with doubt.
Just kick at it and make so much noise that it announces to every worker in the building where we are? Well, yeah, if it comes to it. Corona, you're not thinking this through.
The Colt stopped dead, sighing. He held up a wing, halting the lavender filly as she absent-mindedly went to pass him. She looked up at her green-maned friend, frowning.
What? I don't think you're thinking clearly. You've got as far as the fact that what we're doing could end up killing us. But you're not thinking about how, if we're dead, we don't even try. I'm sorry, Corona. You don't have to yell. Cloud, I didn't mean to, you know that. But you need to start thinking more positively. I'm just as afraid as you are about this. I mean, a ghost? Really? That's crazy. They don't even exist. And here we are, walking down an aisle to a screaming room to hunt a ghost who will help us break a bunch of shattered ponies out of a jail floating in the sky, who will then break us out of the Cloudsdale Weather Corporation before we get mushed into a rainbowy fine paste. There's a lot of things that don't exist yesterday that do now. You're delusional, Corona. There's gotta be something concrete in that room. Something physical that'll actually help us. Not some ethereal concept that's been trapped since the beginning of time. You always run ahead. Too fast to stop. Without thinking about things. And yet, if I hadn't done that, we'd have been caught by those workers and possibly some steam running in the engine right now. You don't need to live life with cynical logic. And you think that this is all perfect and sunshine and will turn out completely okay? Of course not. I'm apocalyptic. I know the world's going to manure, but I'm doing what I can about it. And I'm going to be happy anyways. I can't change you, I know. You're going to worry and mope about everything. But it's got to get done, so I don't want to hear it from you.
Cloud-covered stepped back, hurt.
But I don't. I know you don't. But I've had enough of your negativity. It's not helping us. Just stop.
The fellow looked down, started walking again.
All right, Corona. I'm just worried is all. Let's just get out of here so we can never see each other again. No, don't. Sorry, Cloud. I'm worried too. Just get out of here so we can be happy again. How's that sound? That sounds lovely. Okay, you're right. It doesn't matter what we do as long as we do something. Let's get at her. That's the spirit. Now come on, Cloud Cover. Let's march. A 1, a 2, and a 3.
The pair looked straight ahead and began a quiet march deeper into the fog. At least they would have, had Cloud not tripped over something heavy on her second step and collapsed.
Well, I tried.
Corona rolled his eyes. Come on.
Get up.
We don't have time for it. What? He flapped one of his pale orange wings, clearing the fog in front of him. On the ground next to the purple Pegasus was an adult worker, completely unconscious. As Cloud pressed herself up and pulled her hoof away in disgust, pulling a strand of blood with her. Corona prodded the white lab coat with his wing. There was no response.
Is he dead? Was that me?
The colt leaned down, cautiously holding a leg against the still body, ready to jump back at any moment.
Well, he's cold. I don't know if that's from the floor, but how did he get here? He wasn't here before. Oh, Celestia. No elements above. Yes, it was. Corona, it's what I hit with my hoof. Oh, no. I killed some pony.
Cloudcover fell backwards again, kicking herself away from the corpse. She sobbed and shrieked, desperately trying to remove herself from her own actions. She glanced at her hoof, a tiny spot of blood dried and stained on her fur. The filly froze as the blemish caught her eye.
I'll never be able to get that out. It's going to be there forever. Even if the blood washes away, there'll always be that spot on my mind. I'll be haunted by this, even if he would have been the one to personally kill me. No one deserves to die. Not even those who believe some do. What have I done? You didn't kill him. You don't know that. I know I kicked something when I was flying. He's been trampled, Cloud. Or something. Unless, for some reason, he has hoof prints manufactured into his chest. Someone ran over him. And we flew back. Remember? But back to the skull. The blood pool.
Corona grimaced as he turned the stallion over, poking and prodding at the body with shaky legs. Struggling not to gag as he examined the body, he shook his head. There's a bump on his head with a little bit of dried blood, but nothing that would even knocked him out. Corona can take a baseball bat to the face, Cloud. A single hoof wouldn't be enough to bring him to the ground, especially not a light filly's. It wasn't you.
Well then, what knocked him out? Get a hold of yourself. Maybe he tripped. Maybe he... Hello, what's this?
The colt reached under the corpse, dragging a canvas bag out from underneath him. It was filled with oats and a large jar of water, as well as a set of keys. Corona sat down and breathed in deeply, inhaling the heavenly scent of the food before him.
Food. Yes, good. Never mind why he got knocked out. He has food. I have never been this hungry in my life. Well, why did he have food? What the bloody Tartarus is going on? Stop asking questions. You have a full meal and no blood on your horseshoes. Well, metaphorically anyways. Let's count our blessings and get on with it. Take a look at these keys. See anything that'll help?
Cloud caught the tossed keys in her teeth, spitting the rusted metal out with a gag.
Ugh. One of these looks like a padlock key. Actually, a few do. We can... Hey! Stop eating! Let's get to that room and close the door behind us. If it's a trap, we'll be dead anyways. If not, we'll have plenty of time to sit down and eat. Makes sense?
Stepping as far around the dead body as they could manage, they carried on. Corona carried the feed bag and Cloud the keys, searching for the glorious end to the fog and dreading coming from the main theater room again. There was no more marching, only a quiet contemplation about the stallion they had left freezing on the floor.
That stallion might have had a family. Didn't even see what he looked like. Maybe he was just young, just started.
Cloudcover shook her head, trying to dislodge the thoughts, but they persisted.
He's going to die here. No one will ever know that he died here except the people that don't care about it, and... So will if I. If I don't get out of here. Corona's right. There's no place for negativity when it's already surrounding us. Okay, let's get this over with.
Her mind paused when she bumped into the Pegasus in front of her. Corona had stopped again. After a moment, Cloud registered that they'd finally met their mark.
Hello?
The filly tested. The agonies and pains of a million lost foals did not answer back.
Well, that's a good sign.
She stepped forward, the keys in her muzzle, and craned her neck to insert it into the padlock. It entered smoothly, dropping the lock with a hollow ka-chunk that echoed down the halls. Corona stepped forward, next to the filly, and they looked at each other.
On 3. Let's just do it on 1.
He nodded, and together they reached up, pressing down on the chain and pulling it out of the massive steel doors. They stepped forward together, facing the huge gates open enough to allow themselves access before slamming the door shut again. The two turned around, panting and sliding down the door together, resting on the floor. In front of them, there was a ghost.